Right, hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am so sorry it's been so long since my last video. I'm aware it's been nearly 5 months at this point. I've just been really busy the past few months. I've been doing my A-levels and preparing for them over the past few months, so I really didn't have time or energy to be making videos. And to go with that, the last few weeks I've been having serious issues with my editing software, so it's been a rough few months in terms of making videos, but we're back now. I'm going to be dedicated to making some videos over the summer. So what are we doing today? Well, today we are going to be doing a classic on the channel. It is the MotoGP 2026 mid-season rider rankings. We have just reached the midpoint of the season, we have just entered the summer break, so now is the perfect time to rank every rider based on how good they have performed this season. We're going to be ranking all these riders in these 5 tiers. From the top we have world class, then we have cracking job, good enough, kinda rubbish, and right at the bottom is eye-wateringly bad. So without further ado, I think we just get straight into it with our first rider, who is Pedro Acosta. Now Pedro Acosta I think has been absolutely fantastic this season. He has been dealt an extremely tough hand in having a KTM bike which just doesn't want to work, and half the time when it does work it just blows up in the middle of a race. KTM should be absolutely ashamed of themselves with the way they've completely messed up Acosta, because I genuinely think Acosta's performances are worthy of a title challenge. I think if he was on an Aprilia, a Ducati, or even a Honda, he'd be fighting for a title based on his performances. I think he's been absolutely world class so far this season. Next up we have his fellow Mercian, Fermin Aldeguer. Now Aldeguer's had a tough old season. Of course he missed all of pre-season pre-season testing and the first Grand Prix through an injury he picked up in training. And then he also picked up a horrible injury in, I believe it was Assen, which meant he's missed that race and the previous race in Germany. And his form as a result has been sort of inconsistent. We must remember he's only one of 2 Ducati riders who is on the GP25, which isn't as good as the GP26, it's clear to see. And he is beating Franco Morbidelli quite comfortably, despite having missed a bunch of races. However, that being said, I don't think he's quite hit the heights of last season, although that being said, that is partly because of the injury. I think I'd say he's doing a good enough job. He's doing fine, but of course, it's hard to build on last season when he's had that many injuries, so I'll let him off. I think he's doing a good enough job. He's not been anything special, but he's doing just fine. Next up, we have his Gresini teammate, Alex Marquez. Now, Alex Marquez is another one who's had a very injury-hit season. Of course, that horrible injury he got in Catalonia massively derailed his season, and just when he was getting into good form as well. Alex Marquez started the season sort of a bit mediocre. He took a while to get going. Then he had that brilliant win in Jerez. He would have won in Catalonia, I'm pretty sure, if it wasn't for that horrible crash. And since he's come back from his injury, he's looked fantastic. He did really well in Netherlands. He of course crashed out of second in Germany, but he looked like the second best rider all weekend. I think Alex Marquez is doing a cracking job, honestly. He's not been as good as he was last season. He's been a bit more inconsistent. The lows have been a lot lower this season, but the highs have been just as high as the last season, so I think he's doing a very good job. Next up we have Francesco Bagnaia. This is a tough one because Bagnaia had such a horrible season last year, and this year has been a step in the right direction. He took a bit of a while to get going. The start of the season was a bit like last season, but he has looked better in recent races. He's been absolutely brilliant on Saturdays. He got a sprint win in Brno. He's got some other sprint podiums. He got 4 podiums in a row early in the season, so he's clearly found his feet again, although he definitely isn't the Pecco of old, and I do think that version of Bagnaia is gone. However, that being said, he is still in a title challenge somewhat. He's only 65 points off Martin. We've seen bigger gaps be eclipsed by him. I don't know, it's definitely an improvement on last season. However, he is still being beaten by a lot of his Ducati teammates, so I think I'm going to say good enough for Bagnaia. He's doing fine. I think he's done enough to justify his big money move to Aprilia, but he's not been anything special. I think he's performed on the same level as Aldeguer, in my opinion. Next up we have Enea Bastianini. Bastianini's had a weird season. He's been another victim of KTM's absolute just horror show. However, at times he has also just not been very fast. He is currently the second highest KTM in the championship. He, of course, got a sprint podium in USA, and he also just looked very good at that weekend. He's had some good performances, and I think across the season he has been the second best Ducati. However, unfortunately, he has thrown it down the road a few too many times. He has crashed in some quite good positions. I'm going to put Bastianini in also good enough. I think being the second best KTM, is a pretty good job. He probably should have a few more points because, of course, he has crashed out some good positions, but I think considering the fact he clearly doesn't suit that bike, he's doing a good enough job. Oh god, now we have Marco Bezzecchi. I think this is the hardest one to judge, honestly. Marco Bezzecchi started the season so well. Of course, he broke the record for the most laps led on a main race. He started phenomenally, and we all thought he was going to run away with the championship. However, since he got that win in Mugello, it's all gone to absolute shit for him. He's scored 13 points since then. Of course, he got that race banned for slapping that marshal in Brno, which was completely deserved in my opinion. He's now picked up a collarbone injury in Germany, and the past 4 races just made far too many mistakes. There was also a pretty underwhelming performance in Catalonia where I think he got very lucky from everybody else just crashing out in front of him. And even before that, he was bottling it a lot on Saturdays. Bezzecchi's had a very topsy-turvy season already. It's so hard to judge him, because going into the season I thought he'd be a title contender, but I still had Marc Marquez winning the championship. However, after a few rounds, to me, it looked like it was Bezzecchi's championship to lose, and at the moment he is losing it. He's currently 4th, 22 points behind Martin, and he has absolutely zero momentum going with him. He started the season absolutely brilliantly, but his recent form has been down here, and he also had some poor results in sprint races. Overall, I think it averages out to be in good enough. As it stands, being 4th in the championship, still within a title fight, it's good enough, I'd say, but he needs to turn it around quick. Also, while we're here, I am going to order these. I'm going to put Bagnaia ahead of... I'm going to do that. I'm going to order these, so I think... Yeah, I like that. Next up, we have Brad Binder. His career has really fallen off a cliff. Ever since Pedro Acosta joined that KTM team, he has just been slowly declining, and I think we're reaching the end point of Brad Binder's career now. It seems like he's going to be out of the seat next year. And honestly, his performances over really the last 18 months haven't really justified him getting a seat. I don't know, I've been quite underwhelmed by his performances. I'm going to put him in kind of rubbish. He's not been horrendous. He's been helped by consistency. He doesn't crash very much, meaning he often gets like around 10th place, but you know, he's still doing worse than Bastianini, who clearly doesn't suit the bike. And when Binder has been on that bike for his 7th year now, you'd expect him to at least be on a par with Bastianini, and he just hasn't been. I think kind of rubbish pretty much sums up his performances. Next up, we have Fabio Di Giannantonio. Digi has been absolutely fantastic. This has been by far his best year. I'm putting him straight in world class. Digi has been fantastic. Up until the last Grand Prix, he was the highest Ducati in the entire standings, which is super impressive. And I've just been massively impressed by his consistency. I think his crash in Germany was probably his first mistake all season, really. Of course, he also got very unlucky being collected in that pile-up in Hungary. Yeah, Digi's been fantastic this season, and I think it's a shame that off the back of this, he's being forced to go to KTM next season. I honestly think his performances deserve a much better seat than that. Yeah, Digi's been amazing, so yeah, world class for him. I'm going to put him just behind Acosta, though, because Acosta is dealing with a much worse bike. Next up, we've got Raul Fernandez. Raul Fernandez had a bit of a patchy season. Raul Fernandez has always been a bit of a patchy rider. He's clearly a rider who relies a lot on confidence. He started the season well with a podium in Thailand. However, his form sort of dipped a bit after that. But then a sprint victory in Mugello, followed by a couple of podiums in the most recent races. Another sprint win in Brno. Overall, I think Raul Fernandez is doing a cracking job. He's earned his contract for next season, I think. It would have been a massive shame if he hadn't got a contract. Yeah, I think Raul Fernandez is a quality rider, and I think he's showing his quality this season. He's doing a pretty good job. Not a pretty good job, he's doing a cracking job. Next up, we have the main man, Marc Marquez. Now, Marquez, God, he's also had a bit of a topsy-turvy season. At the start of the season, I would honestly have probably put him in, like, good enough, because his form at the start of the season was very weird. He was doing amazingly on Saturdays, but on Sundays he just couldn't seem to get it together. There was some bad luck, but there were also just some unnecessary mistakes in there. Then he got that injury in Le Mans, and since then he's just been a completely different beast. I don't know what's come over him, but he's been absolutely amazing. And honestly, I'm just going to put him straight in world class. Has he been the best rider on the grid? No, right. I think since he came back from his injury, he's been the best rider on the grid. However, the first 5 races of the season were a bit subpar for Marc Marquez's standard. Obviously, he's still in world class, but I've honestly been more impressed by Digi and Acosta this season, so I'm going to put him at the end of world class. But Marc Marquez is still doing a fantastic job, and if he goes on to win this championship, he will be at the very top of world class. I am starting to realise now that this list is currently very top heavy. Generally, though, I do think that most of the riders so far this season have been pretty good. However, if we look later in the list, there are definitely some riders that, will be down there. However, the next rider, Luca Marini, isn't one of them. He has been doing a really solid job. He is currently the highest Honda in the rider standings, and by some distance as well. He's in the top 10 of the World Championship on a bike which probably doesn't really deserve to be up there. And he's doing what Luca Marini does. He just gets consistent results. He's had a few good results, like 5th place in Hungary, 6th place in, Catalonia. So honestly, I'm going to put Luca Marini at the bottom of cracking job. I think that, he's been probably the best Honda, and he's getting what Honda need, which is consistent results. So good on him. He's doing a good job. Also, I am going to move Raul Fernandez above Alex Marquez here. I did forget to do that. Next up, we have Jorge Martin. Now, Jorge Martin, God, this is another really difficult one because he came into this season. Did he miss some of pre-season training? I feel like Martin missed some of pre-season training. Correct me if I'm wrong. And of course, he's going onto a bike which he didn't really get to learn at all last season because of his injuries. But he's gone onto there and he's been on quite a few occasions just as fast as Marco Bezzecchi. On some occasions better. He's been more consistent than Bezzecchi. And of course, he's leading the championship. However, I do think there has been quite a few mistakes from Martin, and I also think he probably should be leading the championship by more points. His form as of late has been a bit underwhelming. Since he caused that pile-up in Hungary, really, his form hasn't been that inspiring, really. And as it stands, I don't think he'll win the championship, so it's really tough to choose him. I don't want to have too many riders in world class, so I'm going to put Martin at the top of cracking job. We must remember he's also been given the best bike on the grid. As much as he maybe hasn't adapted to it fully yet, it is still the best bike on the grid, so I'm not sure. I mean, he's doing a great job. I wasn't expecting him to be in a title fight at all this season, so to be leading the championship at the halfway point is really good going. I think with the way it's heading with his more recent form, I'm just going to put him at the top of cracking job. He's doing a great job, but I don't think he's been quite on the level of these three, so yeah, Jorge Martin and cracking job at the very top. Next up, we have Jack Miller. I feel like there might be a bit of recency bias with this one because Jack Miller just came off the back of a pretty good weekend at Germany where he did really well in qualifying and was fighting at the top end of the grid for much of the race. However, in true Jack Miller fashion, he faded at the end of the race due to a lack of tyre wear. And that's sort of just been the story of Jack Miller's season, really. He's had some good qualifying performances, but they've almost never translated to a good points tally. Out of the Yamaha riders, Jack Miller is currently third on 19 points. He's behind Alex Rins, who I expect him to be beating Alex Rins at this point. He had one good result in Hungary, but apart from that, it's sort of just been mediocre results. And he started the season with 4 0-point score finishes in a row. I'm going to put Jack Miller in kind of rubbish. I'll put him ahead of Brad Binder, though. I've not been very impressed with Miller this season. I know he's been dealt with a pretty terrible bike, but compared to his Yamaha teammates, he's not doing great. So I'm going to put him in the second lowest tier. Next up, we have Joan Mir. Now, Mir has had another very rocky season. He's been crashing once again, which should be no surprise to anybody. He is currently the lowest scoring Honda in the championship, which is pretty shocking considering Zarco's missed so many races and he's got a rookie teammate. However, we do also need to remember he had a podium ripped away from him in Catalonia, a second place even, which would put him above Zarco in the championship. And he also did get a good result in Brno. Joan Mir's pace has been pretty good. I honestly think his pace has been up there. However, the thing that matters is results, and his results have been pretty shocking, to be honest. I'm going to put him here in kind of rubbish. No, and I'm going to put him above Brad Binder, behind Jack Miller. At least he's showing some pace. His pace and his qualifying have been pretty good, and he has been the one who's pushing the Honda the highest on the grid. He's been the fastest Honda on most occasions, but it's a result-based business, and the results just haven't been there, so I have to put him in kind of rubbish. Next up, we have Franco Morbidelli. This one is very easy for me. He is the first person to go in eye-wateringly bad. Morbidelli had one good result, a sprint podium in Jerez, but apart from that, his season has been absolutely catastrophic, especially when you consider the fact that Di Giannantonio is fighting for a championship. Morbidelli's performances in comparison are absolutely embarrassing, and if I was Ducati, I'd honestly consider just booting him mid-season because he's been pathetic. There's been multiple occasions where he's finished behind the Yamahas. Where is he in the championship? Let me have a look. He's 16th in the championship on 46 points. For comparison, Fermin Aldeguer has 76 and has missed 3 races. So, yeah, he's truly been eye-wateringly bad. Next up, we have Diogo Moreira. Now, Moreira is an interesting one. He is one of 2 rookies going into this season, and I do think he's been the best of the 2 rookies, and he's probably been one of the most impressive Hondas. His qualifying performances have been absolutely brilliant. However, this is what happened in Moto2 to start with. His qualifying is really good, his starts to races are really good, but he fades later in races. He clearly still needs to learn tyre wear, and I'm sure he will learn it eventually, but yeah, he clearly still has a lot to learn. But the raw pace is clearly there. He is the second highest Honda on the grid. However, I do think if Zarco was fit, he would be the 3rd highest. But honestly, I'm going to put him at the bottom of tracking job. I think for a rookie, he's doing a really good job. If he can learn to save his tyres, he's going to be an absolute monster in the future. But for now, I think I'm going to put him in cracking job. And do I put him? No, I'm going to put him below Marini. Marini is doing a really good job in terms of points, but Moreira's raw pace has been fantastic, so I'm going to put him in cracking job. Oh, next up we have Ai Ogura. I'm going to put Ai Ogura straight in world class. Ai Ogura has been absolutely fantastic, and I did not see this coming from him. I thought that this season would be another consolidation year, build on last season, especially when, he ended last season with a bit of injury hit form. He wasn't as good as he started 2025. However, this season has just been absolutely brilliant from him. He currently sits 2nd in the World Championship. His form in the past 3 Grand Prix has been absolutely fantastic. There have been a few... he didn't start the season amazingly. Towards the start of the season, Ralph Fernandez was mostly outperforming him, but as of late, Ai Ogura has been honestly probably the best rider on the grid in the past 3 rounds, definitely. I'm going to put him as the 2nd best rider on the grid, honestly. Or, no, honestly, no. I've been more impressed with him than I have been Acosta. I think Ai Ogura has been the best rider on the grid so far this season, because if you told me he'd be in a title fight come the halfway point, I would have not believed you if you said that at the start of the year. And he's only 14 points off Jorge Martin, and with the way that the form is currently, he could be leading the championship, honestly, after Silverstone, really. So, yeah, Ai Ogura has been absolutely phenomenal. Fair play to him. I did not see this coming. Next up, we have Fabio Quartararo, which is such a difficult one. To me, it's very clear that Fabio Quartararo is just phoning it in. He is not trying in half of the races, and it's shown in a few of his results. However, there have been a few times where he has been the only semi-competitive Yamaha, and he's got some really good results. But there have also been some races where he's clearly not trying. He's been even the slowest Yamaha at times. I don't know, I feel like Quartararo definitely has untapped potential. If he was trying a bit more, I think he could get a few more points out of that Yamaha. I rate Quartararo so highly, so honestly, compared to Quartararo's expectations, I'm going to put him in good enough, but at the top, I think. No, at the top, there you go. I think the top of good enough. As much as that Yamaha is an absolute lawnmower, I still think that with Quartararo's undoubted quality, he could be getting a bit more out of that bike. So yeah, overall I think Quartararo is just doing a good enough job. On the verge of cracking job, but I think the low points this season mean I can't put him in the top 2 tiers. Next up we have Toprak Razgatlioglu. Toprak I think is doing a pretty good job. I'm going to put him in good enough. I'll put him... yeah, I think that's a pretty good spot to put him. He is currently the lowest Yamaha on the grid. However, considering he's a rookie who's never even raced on the MotoGP, like in the paddock, he'd not been in Moto2, Moto3 ever, I think he's adapted pretty well. You must remember there's probably quite a lot of tracks which he's never been to before. And overall, I think he's doing a solid job. Maybe he could be getting a few more points here and there. He did start the season by crashing quite a few times, but overall, I think he's doing just fine. He's adapted to MotoGP quite well, and I do think that he has shown that next season he will be a threat. So, honestly, good job from Toprak. He's doing a pretty good job. Next up, we have Alex Rins. Now, I'm still really undecided on this one. Alex Rins, I was honestly surprised to see this, is the second highest Yamaha on the grid, and at the start of the season, I put him to be dead last. So, compared to my expectations, he's doing a pretty alright job. But I don't know. I feel like for Alex Rins at this point in his career, he needed to be like up in the top 2 tiers if he had any chance of saving his career, and he just hasn't been. I'm going to put him in good enough because being the second best Yamaha is not what I expected from him. I thought he'd be right at the bottom, so he's doing a fine job, I guess. He has had a few decent results here and there, like a 9th place in Assen, but I don't know, his form hasn't been good enough for me to put him any higher. I think he's doing just about a good enough job, but clearly not good enough to keep him on the MotoGP grid. So Alex Rins, he's doing decent, I think. Next up, we have Maverick Vinales. He is going straight and eye-wateringly bad. He has been easily the worst rider on the grid. God, Maverick Vinales has been embarrassing this season. He started the season slowly, however, he then put that down to injury. However, why would you continue when you know you're injured? Apparently, he was hiding the injury from KTM for the first 2 rounds of the season, which is just completely idiotic. I don't know why you would do that. It then cost him 3 rounds of the season. He missed 3 rounds. And since then, his form has been embarrassing. He got 11th place in Catalonia, but there were probably about 11 finishes in that race. And since then, his form has been so much worse than the rest of the KTMs. And the other KTMs haven't even been that good. He's been so much worse than even like Brad Binder. And his performance in Sachsenring really was the icing on the cake, because that was truly something to be ashamed of. I would not be surprised if KTM pull the plug and fire him mid-season. Like, he's clearly given up. That performance in Germany was the icing on the cake. There was clearly no trying from him whatsoever. Yeah, his attitude and his form and just everything about Vinales this season has been disgraceful. So, yeah, eye-wateringly bad. He's been shocking and the worst rider on the grid easily. And finally, we have Johann Zarco, who, again, is another difficult one to judge because he's missed so much of the season. He got that terrible injury in Catalonia. Apparently, he's not going to be back until September. And it's a huge shame, honestly. But before that, his form was a bit sort of just average, really. I'm going to put him in good enough. I'll put him there. His form before then was just a bit average, really. I think he was the second best Honda. He was sort of just about... He was doing the same as Luca Marini, really. Sort of just putting the Honda where it should be. He was doing well in qualifying, and in the wet in Jerez, he was fantastic. But his results were a bit mediocre to decent. So, honestly, good enough towards the bottom of it. I think that's a pretty solid rating for Johann Zarco. And that is it. That is a completed tier list. So in the end, it was quite a top-heavy tier list. But honestly, I think most of the riders this season have been better. I think there's been a lot more good performances this season than there have been bad performances. So honestly, I think this is a pretty fair tier list. So I now want to know what you guys think. So let me know in the comments below. What do you think of my ratings? Have I been too harsh to any riders, or have I been too kind? Let me know. And while you're there, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos. Like I said, I'm so sorry that it took so long to get a video out. Now that my A-levels are done, I'm going to be making videos across the summer. There won't be any for a couple of weeks because I am on holiday, but I am going to try really hard to get a video out before the British Grand Prix. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching and for your patience. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Bye bye.